So I'm happy with that. I'm just running my nail across it, feeling if I've got a step or not. Alright, and then this is where we can come in with Tamiya extra thin cement. Alright, because we've got this all locked in and we've got it all lined up, and because we played around, we've got it into perfect position. Right, we're not going to be making any real mess, because what we can do is just run it along our actual join line across here. Right, and you'll see that it will just, just lovely sort of, get in there, and it'll just run all the way across. I mean, I could literally sort of touch one end, and then that has potentially flowed however far down, but it's a good idea just to sort of bring your brush across anyway. And then also, I mean, if you ever get the chance to sort of come in on the underside, always good to sort of get in on inside there. It just makes a neater glue line and stronger. Because you've got the pegs in place, there's going to be a few areas you just might not quite be able to get. Right, don't worry about it, because remember, this glue has that capillary action to actually, go farther than you actually think it can actually go. Right, plus the good thing is we're getting enough glue down for this to actually seal and glue together, so that when we do remove the pegs, right, if there was any areas we found it a bit tricky to get into, just after it's glued together, remove the pegs and glue along. So for instance, if we couldn't quite get underneath here, I mean, I know we can. If we couldn't, I mean, we could have just glued up to here, then we remove the peg, and then we can get access and finish that off. It doesn't matter what sort of sequence you sort of go in, but generally you can sort of get pretty much anywhere. Then we had this sort of gappage going on in here. If we get a bit of this glue in, right, it should hopefully, seal up these gaps a little bit more as well. Because what you do find is that where you might see a bit of a gap, I know we've got a big gap in there, but it was a bit gappy in here, and then I put some glue in there, it melted, so it come together a bit more, and it just makes everything a nice bit better. So I'm going to go around and get this all glued. Just remember also, as a note, you don't want our glue to sort of, I don't know, if you maybe touch the glue here, right, and you've got a big blob and it goes down, right, and goes onto this actual peg here, the peg will sort of suck in, just like the capillary action, it'll suck in that glue in and underneath the pegs, and then it will leave peg imprints on the actual model. So you want to be careful around the pegs in that sense. Maybe when we come to like a peg area like this, instead of sort of coming down, what we can do is get gravity on our side, right, and we can just lift this up and have it so that the glue will run down this way, so it won't run down onto the actual peg. That is also another way of doing it. So our fuselage is all nicely glued. Let's take a look at our wing section. Now, for this we want to start getting out some sanding sticks. I did show you before that I did buy just a couple of like nail file sets. What you're basically looking for is, I mean, we've got these type of sanding sticks which are more sort of like medium to coarse grits. It's good for getting out some of the big stuff, but you do want to try and find something like this, the nail buffers. Anything you can sort of find. I mean, as you can see, you know, they're only like £1 a pack. You get loads of sanding sticks, really cheap to sort of just get those sanding sticks going. Yes, we can buy more professional sanding sticks, which we can do better jobs and are a bit more easier to work with, but these are just so cheap just for getting started. So let's open these up. So I'm just picking out the smallest one I can get my hands on, because this is 1/72 scale, and you know, we've got some tight spots to get into. Now what you want to be doing is we get stuff like these ejector pin marks. Let's maybe bring you in real close. You won't be able to see these little circles. These are called ejector pin marks. Basically, we've got our sprue just here, and what happens is they go into the mold, they inject the plastic in there, and then we've got all these little circles just on here, and what happens is these little pins kind of push down and basically pop our sprue out of the mold, and that's what those little circles are. And it's just basically because the plastic is probably still a little bit on the soft side, so it can leave little sort of imprints on the model. So we've got these ejector pin marks just here. Now some of them can sort of get in the way. We've got one here, but it does go into a dip. I'm not too worried about that, but we do have two just here, as you can see there. Those are like sticking out a little bit. Those could sort of hinder our piece going on top of here, right, which, you know, it does a little bit. You can maybe just see there's a slight bit of gappage just on the end there. So, you know, it's good practice to get out your sanding sticks, right, a nice small one, and basically we just need to just sand away at these ejector pin marks that are getting in the way. Right, now it doesn't matter, we can use a nice coarse sanding stick as well. We don't need to go in with a fine one, you know, because we're not going to see this at all, right? Our two pieces of plastic are going to hide it, so we can just come in with some really sort of nice coarse sanding stick and just sand them completely away, right? So with both sides nicely sanded away, those ejector pin marks, it just fits that little bit better. And then, as always, get out those pegs. And before we do any gluing, we're just going to sort of lock this down, right? Just like so. Again, you've got to sort of remember that when we come in with the glue, with our Tamiya extra thin cement, is you don't want to be doing the whole letting gravity sort of potentially have this drip down on you. So it's good to sort of get it at the 90-degree angle and have gravity go in the direction you want it to go, because this has got good capillary action and it will flow down very nicely. Alright, so try not to get it to flow in a way that it's going to go across any surface detail, go onto a form or a peg, and then sort of, you know, leave a nasty imprint in your work. Alright, and you just want to sort of go around with pegs all the way around, pretty much sort of like just what we did with the fuselage. Moving along with a little bit more sanding, if we look at our piece just here, you can sort of see our glue line just on there. Now when it comes to glue lines, it does sort of show that these two halves have been brought together. It's showing that it's a model, and what we like to do is make it realistic as possible, and to do that is to remove any sort of join lines like that, to make it look seamless, to make it look one piece, make it look realistic. And any sort of lines on our model, we want them to be what's supposed to be there, like panel lines, recess rivets, all that kind of stuff. So to get rid of these, really you want to be sort of coming in with different stages of sanding. So first off, right, we've got a little bit of plastic that needs to be gotten rid of. Now we do have, you know, it's the sanding sticks we have on offer here, it might be a bit tricky going out and buying cheap, which is why we go off and buy these more fancier sanding sticks as our hobby progresses, because you know what, the grits are sort of very sort of coarse. I mean, this is just plastic. It doesn't take much to sort of sand away at these, but hopefully we'll get there in the end. So I'm just coming in with what I've got, which is like sort of like quite a coarse sanding stick. So hopefully we'll get away with it. But basically what we're going to do now is we're just going to sort of just lightly sand away at the top. Right, now this is a coarse sanding stick, so lightly is sort of like the key. You don't want to be really sort of digging down, because potentially you could make more work for yourself with a coarse sanding stick, because it could really sort of scratch away at it. But basically this sanding stick is now sort of just lightly sanding away at the plastic. It's getting rid of any potential steps. If you remember, we talked about steps in the beginning. With gluing them, you might have potential steps, so it's going to be like sanding them away. Right, and then you just want to be feeling it as you go along. Okay, I can maybe still feel a little bit of a step actually with this one a little bit. Right, but you don't want to go too far, because what you got to remember is there is a curve. Right, to this we have got a curve. This is a flat sanding stick. If we keep going with it, it's just you end up having a flat top, which is not going to be right. You're going to mess about with the shape of the model itself. Right, so I think that's probably just enough. You don't want to go too far with our coarse sanding stick. Then I managed to find these blocks. Right, I mean, they are big and bulky, but we've got all sorts of stuff on them, like foil, shine, smooth, buff, all these different things. I mean, you might be able to find something different, but it's all about finding something cheap. So we're just going to start off with, I'm trying to feel them actually. You can sort of feel the grit on them and how smooth they are. Right, and you want to basically go down the grits, basically go as coarse as you can to then a medium, fine, smooth, buffing, shining. Right, so I'm feeling the foil's good. And what I like about these blocks when I brought them was, they're going to sort of shine the plastic up, smooth it out, but they are spongy. Right, and spongy is sort of what you want to be looking for in sanding sticks, because they're gonna go with the curvature of your model, so you don't get like flat tops. Right, so I'm just gonna continue sort of buffing at this. Right, and I'm sort of feeling that. You might be able to see how that's sort of shining up a little. Well, not shining up, but sort of smoothing out. Right, this foil side is actually not too bad, to be fair. We probably might not have to go any more than that, but we want to make sure that we get all the scratches out from our previous sanding stick, because each sanding stick's going to leave, the coarser it is, it's going to leave these tiny little scratches on there, and the whole point is you work down the grits to eventually sort of remove all the scratches, and just basically you end up with a piece where you don't see any seam line. Right, all the scratches are gone. The plastic just looks like the rest of the plastic all over the model, and it's basically just invisible, makes everything invisible. So what we can do now, I mean, I'm not 100% happy with that. I think we're going to have to deal with one or two bits on it, but it's a little bit hard to see. I mean, even on camera, even with the Mark 1 eyeball, it's a bit hard to see. So we need to sort of indicate what problems we've got. After doing that little bit of a quick sand, see what we've got to deal with.